Exposed. Written by Suzana Thompson. Narrated by Lauren Sweet. Chapter 4. I heard them approaching the kitchen in boisterous conversation, and I braced myself to deal with them. Josh Myers walked in first and stopped in surprise when he saw me.
Ella?
He glanced back at the doorway, probably looking for an explanation from Mason. Tyler Hicks wasn't as hesitant.
Ella! Are you offering your services? You should have worn a sexier costume, but you're still hot. How much for an hour? She's serving drinks,
Mason said flatly.
Stop harassing my help. Your help?
Tyler questioned with a smirk.
What is she helping you with? Maybe she can help me too. She can get you a drink.
Mason snapped at him and nodded curtly to me. As I grabbed a cup and began to fill it with beer, Tyler wheedled Mason.
You're not gonna share? That's a little selfish. You've got 2 girls and, hey, are you having a threesome? Oh man, that's hot.
I scowled at Mason as I turned around, but he was too busy glaring at Tyler to notice.
I have 1 girl,
he retorted, gesturing at Addison, who looked completely mortified. His sullen gaze fell on me.
This one is serving drinks. Give him his damn drink and do your fucking job,
he commanded. Tyler grabbed the cup from my hand.
Whatever, man. Just keep the beer coming. Could I have one too, please?
Josh asked me. Sure, I replied, and filled a cup for him.
Thank you, Ella,
he said, and smiled at me as I handed it to him. I smiled back. You're welcome. The doorbell rang, and Mason told Addison to answer the door. Aren't you coming with me? She asked. It's your house.
You get it,
he said dismissively.
I want a drink.
I pulled another cup off the stack, but Mason snatched it from me.
Go home,
he snapped as I turned my startled gaze on him.
I don't need you here to do this.
Thrilled to get this unexpected reprieve, I hurried to leave before he changed his mind. Tyler urged me to stay and party, while Josh stated that he'd walk me to my car and followed me out of the room. Mason caught up to us and insisted on walking me out himself.
She works for me. It's my responsibility to keep her safe,
he claimed. I almost asked him who would keep me safe from him, but I didn't want to push my luck.
Okay,
Josh said reluctantly.
I guess I'll see you at school, Ella.
Yeah, I agreed. See you, Josh. Thanks for, that was sweet of you to think of walking me to my car. I'd almost thanked him for being nice to me, but saying that would have sounded really pathetic. Having Mason walk me out felt very awkward, because it didn't fit my situation with him. There was nothing friendly between us, so concern for my well-being couldn't be the reason he was doing this. His abrupt dismissal of me gave me hope that he was already sick of having me around. Maybe he wanted to talk to me alone to give me some task that didn't involve being at his house. I didn't go as far as to succumb to my wishful thinking that he wanted to leave me alone completely. He was still radiating angry tension, so he hadn't let go of his misplaced wrath.
What did I tell you?
He demanded when we reached my car, and he spun to face me.
What were my instructions?
I wasn't sure what he was talking about, and I stared blankly at him. He didn't wait long enough for me to form a response anyway.
I told you not to talk to anyone. You were just supposed to serve them their drinks. I didn't bring you here to pick up guys.
I wasn't, I protested. It's not my fault that idiot, Tyler, believes all your stupid crap about me. You're the one who started all that shit about my mom being an escort, I added resentfully. As much as some of the things she had done upset me, Nobody liked to have their mom's name dragged through the mud.
I wasn't talking about Tyler,
Mason said.
You were flirting with Josh. Did you think I'd let you use my party to hook up with him? You weren't a fucking guest. I didn't invite you.
I wouldn't want to come to your party, I retorted. You're the one who won't leave me alone. I don't want anything to do with you. And I wasn't flirting with Josh. He just happened to be the only person around who didn't treat me like shit. I wasn't going to be rude to him just because the rest of you are assholes. His eyes glinted dangerously beneath the streetlight.
Don't think for 1 minute that I'll let you worm your way into my group. You're not one of us, and you never will be. FYI, fucking Josh won't get you in. His nice guy act stops after you give it up, so you can forget about him asking you to be his girlfriend, because that's not happening.
It hadn't occurred to me to think of Josh as a potential boyfriend after such a brief interaction with him. And I certainly wasn't looking for a way into the popular crowd. I didn't aspire to be part of the group who had ruined high school for me. I hadn't been able to beat them, but I sure didn't want to join them. Yet now that Mason was so opposed to it, the thought of pursuing it just to aggravate him was very appealing. The fact that he didn't want me to flirt with Josh suddenly made that something that I wanted to do. I dismissed outright everything Mason had said about Josh, because I knew firsthand how he lied about people. I wasn't naive enough to believe that Josh was a sweetheart either, but I would make my own assessments of his character. Trusting Addison had been a terrible misjudgment on my part, so I would be much more careful with Josh. I wasn't going to let down my guard with him, but I could still enjoy his gentlemanly treatment of me, even if it was just an act. I was long overdue for some normal attention from boys. Mason had interfered with all the other guys, but he wouldn't be able to thwart Josh. He couldn't bully one of his own friends. I smiled at him with false sweetness. It worked for Addison. She didn't have a prayer of being popular until she latched onto you. It's like a fairy tale, I mocked. You're her knight in shining armor.
She's a bitch who's using me to get what she wants, but I got what I wanted too.
He stepped closer to me and spoke with taunting satisfaction.
I own your ass now. You do what I say, or senior year will be hell for you. Even if you transfer to another school, that picture will never go away once it's online. Even if they take it down, people will already have it. It'll always be out there, and someone will find out about it eventually.
I feared that he was right, and I didn't want that picture to haunt me when I went away to college. I had been looking forward to being free of Mason after this last year of high school, but he now had something that he could use against me indefinitely. That thought made me sweat, but he had only mentioned senior year, so I hoped that he was planning to move on after that and leave behind his vendetta against me. It would be extremely immature to carry it on beyond high school, but then again, he had no reason to have a vendetta against me in the first place. Feeling suddenly weary after the long, stressful day I'd had, all the fight drained out of me. Yes, I know. Can I please leave now? I pleaded. He regarded me for a moment as I stood drooping on my feet.
I should make you do something else to pay for not following orders. But I'll let it slide this time, since you seem to know your place now. Don't let it happen again, though. From now on, you do exactly as I say. Understand?
Yes, I answered tiredly.
Good,
he said, and pulled out his phone.
Give me your number. I'll text you when I want you to do something. You better not ignore my texts,
he warned.
Don't give me any bullshit excuses about your phone not being charged. If you don't answer, you'll regret it.
Okay, I said, just wanting the day to be over. I gave him my number and then saved his on my phone at his insistence.
Go home now,
he told me.
I'll see you tomorrow at dinner.
My gaze had drifted toward my car, but it flitted back to him. "Dinner?" I asked, thinking that he was going to have me come back tomorrow to cook for him.
"Yes,"
he replied.
"I'm coming over your house for dinner. 6 o'clock. Text me the address later. And make sure that your wonderful mother is there. I'm looking forward to meeting her."
"You want to meet my mother?" I asked in disbelief, my exhaustion forgotten.
"I imagine it will be a delightful evening,"
he remarked, somehow managing to set me on edge more by keeping the sarcasm out of his tone. "What are you going to do?" I questioned suspiciously.
"I'm going to eat dinner with you and your lovely mother,"
he replied in that same light tone. "My dad will be there too," I told him anxiously. "Please don't say anything in front of him."
"Your mother reconciled with your father?"
"No," I answered. "He's my stepfather."
"She's still with the same husband?"
he asked in astonishment.
"The one she married 4 years ago?"
"Yes, and he has nothing to do with this, so please don't do anything in front of him."
"Well, I never would have imagined your mother settling down into wedded bliss. I've got to see this for myself. Maybe she's changed."
The sarcasm was clear in his voice this time. "You won't say anything?" I prodded.
"If you don't give me any trouble, we'll just have a nice dinner with your family."
"Mason!" Addison called, and I turned my head to see her approaching us. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "People were wondering where you were."
"I thought you'd be in your glory hosting one of these parties. This is the crowd you couldn't wait to be a part of,"
he said, sounding like he was taunting her. "You're supposed to be with me," she complained as I opened the car door. "They expect to see you at—" She cut off in mid-sentence as Mason grabbed my arm to stop me from getting into the car.
"Did I give you permission to leave?"
he demanded. "You told me I could go home," I protested. "In the kitchen, you said—"
"I was speaking to you,"
he cut in sharply.
"Regardless of whether someone interrupts me, you wait to be dismissed."
"Why are you touching her? You promised you wouldn't touch her." He disregarded his girlfriend's distress.
"I promised I wouldn't have sex with her. I never said anything about touching her."
"Let go of me," I said.
"Ask me for permission to leave."
I hated his stupid games, but I acquiesced so I could leave and get this day over with. "Can I leave? Please?"
"You know better than that,"
he chided.
"Ask me properly."
I sighed in a long, suffering manner. "May I please leave?"
"Your grammar is correct,"
he commented mildly, but I could tell he was enjoying this.
"However, you haven't addressed me properly. I told you there would be consequences for not doing exactly what I say."
I couldn't overlook the threat in his words, no matter how harmless his tone sounded. I couldn't take the chance of him ruining my dad's opinion of me. So I swallowed what was left of my pride. "May I please leave, sir?" He released a soft breath.
"Yes,"
he said, his voice inflected with what sounded like sexual satisfaction to my ears. Madison must have heard it too. "Mason!" she protested, but was unable to actually call him out on anything since he let go of my arm in that moment. I was grateful for the cover of darkness to hide the blush creeping over my face. The sound of Mason's voice shouldn't have affected me this way. It seemed to have traveled straight down to my core. I quickly got in the car and shut the door, fumbling to put the key in the ignition as my heart raced for no apparent reason. I finally succeeded and straightened up to see where I was going. I jumped in my seat when Mason rapped on my window.
"Put your seatbelt on,"
he commanded. Too flustered to argue that I never wore my seatbelt, I put it on and shifted into drive. Glad that I had parked on the street, I pulled away and breathed a heavy sigh of relief. This long, strange day was over. Thinking back on it was surreal. Had I really been at Mason's house this morning in lingerie? It seemed like it could be one of my sex dreams about him, albeit much kinkier than usual. My dreams centered more on kissing him as I felt his hands on my body. It never went very far before I woke up, which left me feeling aroused but unwilling to do anything about it. I was affronted by the fact that Mason was the one who had turned me on, even if it was only in a dream, and I refused to finish what he started. I had tried masturbation once while determinedly thinking about a hot rock star, but my mind had drifted back to my dream about Mason and expanded on it. Too far gone to stop, I imagined Mason's hand between my legs instead of my own, and my climax came upon me with blinding intensity. It was my first and only orgasm, and I was very ashamed of myself for it because it had involved thoughts of Mason. Seeing him at school that day had been awful as I carried my secret shame. He had looked at me, and I had spun away as I blushed scarlet. He had pounced on me like a predator scenting blood. Catching up to me, he had blocked my escape in the crowded hallway.
"You're blushing,"
he exclaimed, before returning to his usual derogatory tone when speaking to me.
"What makes a girl like you blush? Being your mother's daughter, you're surely long since past blushing. So, what nasty deed could possibly embarrass you?"
"Get out of my way," I said, as I kept my gaze on the floor where I could see only his shoes in front of me.
"Why won't you look at me?"
he asked suspiciously.
"What could be so embarrassing for you?"
"I'm not embarrassed," I lied. "I just don't want to look at you because I can't stand you." I darted a glance sideways in preparation for sidestepping him, but he stepped with me, even closer into my personal space. My breath hitched at his proximity, and heat that had nothing to do with embarrassment flushed my skin. A soft gasp escaped me when he reached out and lifted my chin. His gaze captured mine, and the feel of his hand between my legs seemed like a real memory. That part of me ached for his touch, and his look became heated in response to whatever he saw in my eyes. "Mason," a female voice called out, and he dropped his hand from my face like I had burned him. I made my escape as his girlfriend at the time distracted him. That had been over a year ago, and he had stopped hassling me after that encounter. I had thought that the spark of sexual tension between us had disturbed him as much as it had me, and that was the reason he backed off. Instead, he had set me up and had been plotting for a year for a way to blackmail me into closer contact with him. It was starting to seem like it was more about that than humiliating me, and Addison thought so too. She called me at 2 o'clock in the morning in a rage. "You're not going to steal him away from me. You hear me, Ella?" "Are you seriously waking me up with your shit?" I demanded. "We're not friends anymore, and I don't give a crap about you." "So now you think you can take Mason from me? Hell no. I'm not letting that happen, you fucking bitch. You're not going to get him with that submissive bullshit." "Yes, sir," she imitated derisively. "Whatever you want, sir." "You're the one who put me in this shit," I retorted angrily. "Why would you let your boyfriend take a naked picture of another girl? How stupid are you? You weren't supposed to have your clothes off," she complained, and I could hear the drunken whining in her voice. She had apparently partied harder than she had last night when she had only pretended to get drunk. "It was just supposed to be an embarrassing video of you being stupid drunk." "You shouldn't have left him alone with me," I said, the fury against her rising up within me. "Forget about being my friend. What kind of girl leaves another girl alone and helpless with a guy who hates her?" She snorted. "Hates you? I can't believe I fell for that bullshit. He's so hot for you, he doesn't even want anyone else. You had sex with him last night, I reminded her, while I was passed out at your house, I added in disgust. Yeah, but not tonight, she said bitterly. After he fucked you today, he didn't want me anymore. But he didn't, I protested in shock. He never— Why the fuck else wouldn't he want it? She yelled, making me wince as I pulled the phone away from my ear to lessen the volume of her voice. He's always loved getting blowjobs from me, even when he didn't want to I cut her off by ending the call because I sure as hell didn't want to hear about her sex life. Turning off my phone to make sure I wasn't disturbed by another call from her, I tried to go back to sleep. It wasn't easy, though, because I kept thinking about what she'd said. Specifically, about Mason not wanting her because he was hot for me. It couldn't be true. I mean, it wasn't that surprising that Mason would want someone else. Addison wasn't as attractive as his former girlfriends, who were all among the prettiest girls at school. She was more of the girl next door type of passably pretty rather than beautiful. I would have preferred her any day to the conceited girls he went with until I found out she had been hiding just as bitchy of a personality as the mean girls. What I couldn't believe was that Mason was forgoing sex because of me. While the spark of attraction I had felt between us last year had flared into lust a few times today, he still hated me. There was no way that I was the reason he had rejected Addison. He was probably just losing interest in her, like he had with all his other girlfriends. He eventually broke up with all of them. At least, that was the talk I had heard around school. That Mason was always the one initiating the breakup. Regardless of his reputation as a heartbreaker, he had no shortage of girls wanting to be with him. It was really sad how fixated they all were on physical rather than inner beauty. But I couldn't exactly throw stones, since I was still attracted to him myself. More than anyone else, I should have been repulsed by him, especially now. His actions were despicable, even before he started blackmailing me. Yet that didn't stop me from having another sex dream about him after I finally fell asleep again. I was laying completely naked in this one as he stood before me fully dressed. But I wasn't embarrassed. The way he was looking at me made me feel beautiful, and he said it aloud, too. "You're so beautiful," he told me. "I wish—" "Kiss me," I urged when he trailed off. "I can't," he said. "I'll never want to stop." "I don't want you to stop," I told him. "I want you to touch me." I spread my legs open in invitation. "Fuck," he swore, as his gaze became heated with desire. "I want to feel your hand for real," I continued brazenly. "It felt so good when I pretended you were touching me." His silver eyes were molten with lust when they met mine. "You were touching yourself?" he asked in a passion-roughened voice. "Yes," I answered, "but I want you to do it." His gaze burned so hot that it felt like a fever was raging through my body. "Close your eyes," he said.